You can be asked by Cambridge how to test for sugar, and the test we use is Benedict test, which is testing for reducing sugars, which is sugars like glucoses and maltoses. And what happens during the Benedict test is that the sugars will change the color of the copper salts from a blue solution over to a yellow if there's some sugar, and almost brick red if there is a lot of sugar. It's a test that's quite easy to do, but remember it requires you to heat the substance, so always take care when you're using heat or flame in the lab.
Now we're going to do the test for reduced sugars. You take a little of the food you want to look at, and we grind it up, and we then put it into a test tube. Then we add some water and swirl around. Then we add some Benedict solution, which contains copper sulfate, and this will make our liquid blue. This is the first part. For the second part, we need to heat some water. For this to work, we need to heat up some water. For this to work, we first need to heat some water up to at least 80 degrees. And then we take our test tube and place it in. Now, if there's reduced sugar here, the color will then change from blue over to more yellow or reddish. It's important when you're using heat like this that you use a water bath and, if possible, eye protection. As you might be able to see, we already now start to see a color change, and the stronger the color change, the more reduced sugar. But this proves that there is sugar in the apple, which is a good thing because that is what we expected. The important thing here is that it needs to go in the hot water, and you need to wait a few minutes to get a result.
The test for starch is the most simple test. Starch are long chains of carbohydrates, and when we add a blue or brown iodine solution, this will turn almost jet black if there is a lot of starch. It's an easy test to do, but don't get the iodine solution on your clothing because it stains.
So, chapter 4. This is the first we're going to do here is activity 4.2, testing food for starch. To be able to test food for starch, we need a food. Here is a biscuit, and we also take a slice of an apple. If these food contain starch, when we then apply an iodine solution, the iodine should change its color from brown to black. Let's see what happens. On the apple, a little bit, not very much, but here on the biscuit, a lot. So from this we can see there's a little starch in the apple, but a lot of starch here in the biscuit. And here we can clearly see the difference between the apple with a little starch and the biscuit with a lot of starch. So this is the iodine test.
There are several ways of testing for fat. The one we're using here is the emulsion test, where we will have the ethanol and the fat mix up, and when this mix gets into water, it will form small droplets, and they will make an almost milk white solution on top. If there is no fat, you just see a clear liquid. Again, this is a quite easy test to do, but you're using pure alcohol, so be careful not to have any heat sources next to it.
So, to test for fat, you take some of the food you want to test, put into a grinder, then you add pure alcohol. As always, be careful when you work with pure alcohol, you don't want any heat sources next to it, it's very flammable. You grind up the food here really good with the alcohol, making a really disgusting sausage smoothie. Once you grind up really good, take a test tube and you add some pure water. And then on top of it, carefully, you pour the alcohol. If a white layer is forming, as you can see here, this indicates that there is fat in the sample. And we can see plenty of fat here in the sausage. So this works really well.
When testing for protein, we use a biuret test. The biuret test, like the Benedict test, use a color change of copper sulfate. This can sometimes confuse students, but in the Benedict test for sugar, we go from blue over to a yellow reddish, where we here go from a blue over to a darker blue purple. And to do it, we need to make the environment where the food sample is in alkaline. And be careful when you're using a strong alkaline like this. Do not get it on your clothing. Be careful with your hands, and if you have it, you should use eye protection.
Okay, now I'm going to try to do activity 4.4, testing for protein. Again, we need some food. Here a biscuit, put a little bit into here. I take a small piece of apple. And we take some sausage. This contains a lot of meat. And we put this into the beaker. Then each we add a little water. And then it is important that you use eye pro and gloves if you have them. We add some potassium hydroxide. It's a strong alkaline, so be careful. Just add a few drops. And then we add a few drops of copper sulfate. And then we shake it, and this needs to stand for a while. It might be a little hard to see, but the one where we put the sausage in now have a much darker blue, almost purple color, where the one we put the apple in and the biscuit in really hasn't changed the color. So that indicates that there's a lot more protein in the sausage than in the others.
So just to recap, if you want to test for sugar, you use a Benedict test. If you want to test for starch, you use the iodine test. If you want to test for fat, use the alcohol emulsion test. And if you want to test for protein, use a biuret test.
So here you can see all 4 different test results. Here is the iodine test, the brown and black. Here is a protein test where you can see the more dark blue purple where we have the protein. Here is the reduced sugar test where you can see a clear color change from the blue to a yellow reddish. And here is the one for fats. We can clearly see a white layer on the top. So this is how we do the 4 different tests here in chapter 4 with food, the iodine, the Benedict, the biuret and the fat test.